Mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, mic check. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Marian, and I'm a UX researcher on the Chrome team. Today, I'd like to share a brief overview of user sentiment decision-making on permission prompts in Chrome. Let's dive right in. Permission prompts on mobile operating systems have been subject to usable security and privacy research for more than a decade. They are well researched and user behavior is fairly well understood. Notable aspects of permission prompts on mobile are that they are centered on the screen, they take up most of the screen space, and they are often modal. They can also have additional information and choices, such as developer-provided rationales, choosing granularity, or options to allow only this time. When using the web on desktop platforms, permission prompts also vary between browsers, but in different ways. There's a difference in presentation. Some browsers show modal prompts like Safari. Others show prompts hanging off the address bar, like in Chrome, Edge, and Firefox. There are also differences in decision permanence. Some prompts have a checkbox to make decisions last for a day, like in Safari, or make it permanent, like in Firefox. Others have all decisions permanent by default, for example, in Edge and Chrome. In many cases, there's also a difference in screen size for the devices that the browsers run on. On larger screens, the permission prompt can actually be very small in comparison to the remaining content, making the non-modal prompts quite easy to intentionally ignore or overlook accidentally. Finally, beyond the prompt UI itself, there are also differences to mobile apps when it comes to how users and websites behave when browsing the web. From websites, you'll frequently see suboptimal user experiences, like websites asking for access to a protected capability right after they finish loading. At this point, users do not have much contextual information and likely can't make a useful decision on a permission prompt. In terms of user behavior, clicking on links and thus moving quickly from one website to the next is quite common, making it all the more important that permission requests come with sufficient context. In the absence of a store enforcing guidelines for permission UX, Chrome has started to make permission prompts quieter on websites where it appears unlikely that the user will allow access. This feature uses a machine learning model we trained on Chrome telemetry. If you're interested in learning more about this, please check out our paper from this year's NDSS. With this work, we provide an overview of how users behave on permission prompts on the web today, as well as their sentiment as they interact with these prompts across websites. We investigated feelings of annoyance and interruption, reasons for decision-making, perceived availability of contextual information, and self-benefit, as well as the impact of a user interaction on the page prior to the prompt show. In the remaining time, we'll look at a brief overview across these goals. Please consult the paper for more details. Let's start with an overview of user behavior. The following data is based on Chrome telemetry from June 2023 and is collected from more than 100 million Chrome installations on Windows, Linux, macOS, and Chrome OS. We will be breaking down our measurements by the actions users took on the permission prompt. There are 4 possible actions. One can obviously click the block and allow buttons, and we record this as deny and allow, respectively. Then there is the option to click the X icon in the top right corner to close the prompt, which we refer to as the dismiss action. Finally, users can also do nothing and just continue browsing, since the prompt is not modal and relatively small in comparison to the screen size. We refer to such outcomes as ignoring the prompt. If we look across these 4 actions, we find that ignoring is actually the most prevalent at 43% of prompts. The next most common action is dismissing at 34%, followed by allowing at 15% and denying at 9%. It might be somewhat surprising to you that dismissing and ignoring the prompt is so common. Prior work on Android found that people most frequently allowed with allow rates between 70 and 86%. One key aspect that is likely at work here, in comparison to prior work on Android, screens are much larger, thus making ignoring most convenient. Additionally, use cases for the web might be more ephemeral, such that making an explicit decision may not feel appropriate to people. Finally, the moments in which websites decide to show prompts might also play a role. We will come back to this in a bit. Another interesting observation is that there are only 4 capabilities websites prompt for with notable volume. Notifications and geolocation are the 2 most requested capabilities on the web, making up 87% of all permission prompts currently shown. Camera and mic are in 3rd and 4th place, but contribute only 5% of the total prompt volume. In total, these 4 types of permissions make up 92% of all prompts Chrome shows on desktop platforms. Our telemetry also tracks if a permission prompt was shown after a prior user interaction. Prior user interaction means that the user clicked on the site or pressed a key within 5 seconds prior to the prompt showing. If we break the number of prompts shown down by whether or not there was a prior user interaction, we find that 84% of permission prompts do not follow such an event. This is particularly pronounced for notifications and geolocation prompts, where only 8% and 4% of prompts respectively have a prior interaction, while 43% and 31% don't. For microphone, the difference is rather small, and for camera, we actually find slightly more prompts with prior user interaction than without. These findings suggest that many websites prompt for notifications and geolocation in moments where the user is not actively doing something. Coming back to the actions users take on the prompt, we find that the presence of a prior user interaction has the effect we would expect. Interacting with the page makes it more likely to allow access. Considering the allow rates for each of the 4 major prompt types, we find that they are substantially higher for notifications and geolocation prompts after a prior user interaction. For geolocation, prompts shown after a prior user interaction have an allow rate that is 3 times higher than without. Interestingly, for camera and microphone, that difference vanishes, suggesting that there is something else happening. Also, the fraction of prompts that are allowed for each of these 2 permission types is much higher to begin with. We'll come back to this effect in later slides. To further investigate what might be influencing decision-making on permission prompts on the web, we collected data on user sentiment immediately after making a decision. We fielded 2 in-context experience sampling questionnaires. These questionnaires appear about 5 seconds after a user made a decision on a permission prompt. People would first see an invitation, briefly describing what this is about. If they accept the invitation, they see 1 question per page before the questionnaire ends in a thank you message that automatically disappears. A given Chrome installation will only show 1 of these invitations in 180 days. We showed a total of 2.6 million of these invitations across the 2 questionnaires we fielded. The first questionnaire received 9.2K complete responses, and the second 16.5K. Each questionnaire covered distinct sets of research questions. The median time to respond was 40 seconds for the first and 55 seconds for the second questionnaire. There is, of course, a central caveat to this data, which is a self-selection bias. People who pay less attention to the top part of the browser or who are annoyed by any sort of pop-up prompt might be less likely to complete the questionnaire and are thus underrepresented in our findings. At the same time, we believe that using in-context questionnaires is very, very valuable for this work, as it provides high ecological validity and a much wider reach than other research methods. Now, let's look at some of our findings. One aspect we asked respondents about was to what extent they found the prompt they just saw annoying. We computed a logistic regression using finding prompts not at all or only slightly annoying as the dependent variable. We find that microphone and camera prompts are almost 2 times as likely to be less annoying, while prompts where users had to deny or dismiss were much less likely to be less annoying, or, in other words, more likely to be more annoying. Finally, while there was a significant effect from having had a user interaction prior to seeing the prompt, that effect was rather small, with an odds ratio of just 1.15. Another aspect we investigated was the reasons participants have for the decisions they took. We provided respondents with a list of reasons they could choose from based on the prior work of Bonnet et al. And Cao et al. We further categorized the reasons into those that can be considered rational decision-making, where respondents refer to aspects like functionality, trusting the developer, or wanting to make a decision at another time. Other reasons we tracked include thinking that nothing bad will happen, just wanting the pop-up to go away, or not noticing the pop-up to begin with. You can read more about the distribution of these reasons across permission types and user actions in the paper, but we find that our respondents cited what we consider rational reasons for the majority of responses across all actions that are possible on the prompt. Even when ignoring, 51% of participants said that they didn't need the functionality or wanted to decide later. We observed one noteworthy problematic reason when ignoring. 30% of respondents flagged that they didn't notice the prompt, which is a downside of not making the prompt modal. This suggests that there may be room for improvement when it comes to the visual prominence of the prompt. A final result I would like to share with you is about feeling sure why a site is asking for access. We know, based on Nissenbaum's contextual integrity framework, that every privacy-related decision is very contextual. Thus, the availability of that contextual information should matter for decision-making. We asked participants to what extent they felt sure about why the site is asking for permission to capture the perceived availability of contextual information. Again, we use the top 2 box score of feeling very or extremely sure about why the site is asking as the dependent variable in a logistic regression model. The results suggest that, for one, contextual information is more readily available when respondents were asked about camera or microphone access, with an odds ratio of 1.32 and 1.37 respectively. This is congruent with the higher allow rates I mentioned for these capabilities. Second, when respondents were not allowing, they were less likely to feel very or extremely sure why the site was asking. This suggests that allowing access is associated with having sufficient information on why the access is necessary. Third, our model shows that having had a prior user interaction only has a negligible effect on the perceived availability of contextual information. Okay, we covered a lot of ground. There's more in the paper, but we're running out of time, so let me summarize what we learned before I wrap up. There are 5 relevant aspects I'd like you to take away from this talk. First, 87% of all prompts Chrome shows on desktop platforms are for notifications and geolocation. Camera and microphone make up another 5%. So permission used on the web is currently very much concentrated on only 4 capabilities. Second, we find that geolocation and notifications prompts, as well as those that respondents did not end up allowing, are more annoying. This suggests that websites should only be asking for permission in situations where users are likely to allow. Third, a user interaction prior to the permission prompt is not common on the web, likely leading to many dismissed and ignored prompts. This suggests that we need to encourage websites to ask for permissions in better moments. Fourth, being able to ignore and dismiss prompts appears useful to respondents, and many still indicated making rational decisions in these situations. So if you are considering designing a permission prompt UI, such temporary deny actions may be worthwhile to enable. Fifth and finally, we investigated to what extent respondents felt that contextual information is available to them when they make decisions. We find that this is higher when allowing and when sites ask for microphone and camera access. This underlines the need for encouraging the use of more contextually relevant moments to ask for permission, especially for geolocation and notification access. With that, I thank you for your attention and hope you enjoy reading about additional findings in our paper. Goodbye.